Welcome, everyone. This is the second episode of Discord in the Rinks, a little impromptu, casual, non-formal podcast where myself and some other members of the Middle-earth strategy battle game Discord community get together and we flap our gums about some random topic. So, like last time, I'm Commi. I've got the king here.
Hello.
And we'll be introducing Vroke, who is going to be coming in as a guest to talk about running a tournament. I myself have ran my first tournament in the past 30 days, and Vroke has run a few. And hopefully we're going to shed some light on running a tournament, what it's like to get started, involved, and kind of try to dissuade those the intimidation factor of running a tournament. Try to get rid of those myths about how hard it is or that you need to be someone special to do it. So I guess without further ado, Vroke, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. So I am Vroke. I've been a part of the community here on the Discord for maybe about 3 years. Yes, it's been about 3 years because it's been about the length of the pandemic. That was when I got back into the Middle-earth strategy battle game. It was a game that I grew up with, as I'm sure many of us did. Then it kind of reached that point when I went off to college that it kind of fell out of interest of me. And then during the pandemic, I just got back into it. That's kind of me there.
Right on. What's your favorite faction, or what have you played lately?
What have I played lately? Well, I've been making a lot of friends by playing a Beornings list that I bought about a month ago. I don't tend to be the greatest or best hobbyist. So I purchased some bears and some Beornings, and they're pretty strong. Played 7 games, won 7 games. Yeah.
They win a fight, they kill stuff. It's as simple as that. They win the fight, yeah, you've lost them.
Yeah. It feels like playing elves that can actually kill things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm certainly making no new friends with that.
That's awesome. Well, the Beornings, they're very aesthetically pleasing. Gotta love big, burly men and women with axes. A surprise, to be sure, in the Middle-earth strategy battle game, but a welcome one.
Oh, yeah. I love them. I love knocking them over with my cavalry charges.
Yeah, I actually forgot that Beornings were a thing in the Lord of the Rings for a while, because it's just like a note, basically.
Yeah.
And I first, relearned about Beornings when I was playing the Mountain Blade Warband. Had this mod called The Last Days of the Third Age, which was just a Lord of the Rings conversion mod, so you can run around and play in the Lord of the Rings setting. And the Beornings were a faction. I was like, who the heck are these guys? Why are they all named themselves after Bjorn? Like, what? They all turn into bears? Later, I learned that Beornings, in fact, can't turn into bears. But they just... they really love dudes that can turn into bears, which is just Bjorn and Grimbjorn. And dang, do they pack a punch in this game. It's awesome.
Right.
Go for it.
As we was going to go on to, we'll talk about getting away from the stigma of how hard it is to set up a tournament. As such, you two have set up tournaments. I've been to tournaments. I've never set one up myself. So just wondering, what got you to want to run a tournament? Was it the lack of tournaments around, or was it just to create an event to get a bunch of people together? Like, if one of you want to go through why you wanted to host one or why you wanted to help host one, and who you had to speak to go about it, such as, was it a local gaming store or was it a hobby group that you were already playing with? Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, sure. Broke, do you want to go first, or do you want to take a sec to formulate some thoughts?
I can go first, because I feel like mine might be simpler than yours. So I'm based out of Richmond, Virginia, in the US. And I'm actually really, really lucky in that there's a very active local scene here. We have a tournament within a couple hours of the city, probably every 2 months, 2 months-ish. So there being a fairly active community, it was really easy for me to get involved in hosting a tournament. I was at an event playing in a tournament last September, maybe October. And I started to notice that it was kind of the same group of like 3 or 4 people that were hosting all of the events in town. And literally during one of the breaks between 2 of the rounds, I went up to the TO, who is someone that I have talked with previously, and we were friendly at that point. And I just said, "Hey, if you ever need anyone to host an event, let me know. Like I am happy to host one." I think that I came from a point of kind of wanting to share that burden, that it wasn't the same people hosting tournaments time after time after time, so that they could be able to play in tournaments. And during that conversation, he just turned to me and said, "Oh, we have an event coming up in a couple months, and I wanted to play in this event. Can you host our doubles tournament?" And I just said, "Sure." And so within the span of literally about 30 seconds, I went from asking, or just, I guess, offering there to host a tournament, to then being asked if I wanted to host a tournament in a couple months. And so being part of this really active community means that we have relationships already with stores that are a part of the area, and that there's a core group of people who kind of set the calendar for the year. So it was very, very easy for me, but I totally get that that's a very lucky and privileged space where I have a tournament every 2 or 3 months that I can go to. So that isn't always the case.
Right. I represent the other case. So for those folks who don't know, I'm based in the state of Maine. And the state of Maine is, to our American listeners, is in fact, yes, not a part of Canada. It is part of the United States of America. And is not just Massachusetts extended, though it kind of just is. I don't know. And so when I moved out to Maine, I did not expect there to be a Maine scene or any Maine players. I didn't have a California scene that I was a part of, because California was still like slowly popping into like the realm of SBG, but really was heavily focused on 40K and Magic the Gathering. But when I came out here, I didn't expect to find any players, and then I discovered the New England group, which is sort of scattered, maybe a collection of 15 active players. There are more that are involved via the Facebook group, but I ended up discovering Brazen LSR, who you heard in the previous episode, who loves LSR, hence the name, and had met another individual, one of the hosts of Gondor Calls for Ale, Ben. I met him here in Maine. And
before you go on, what is New England? Is that like 5-6 different states, or?
Yeah, so New England. Now, I say this not as a resident New Englander, so I might mess up with this geographical information. But New England is basically Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine. I think Connecticut might be involved in some way. It's the states north of New York, I believe.
Right. Okay. So just like the north east of the US. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The northeast coast. So when I met them, I found out that there was going to be a tournament in Massachusetts at ArmorCon. It was called Return to the Path of the Dead, and I attended that. It was hosted by Alex Dubois, and it was cool. It was 12 people playing in a one-day tournament, 3 rounds, and it was fun. And I met Matt Iverson, one of the hosts of the Unexpected podcast. I met him and his son, another host of the podcast, and we talked. And we had met previously at a game day where it was the Dragon Emperor's debut, and it rolled over my Iron Hills. And so we became familiar with each other just a little bit. And at the end, after the ArmorCon tournament, he said, "Hey, if there is ever a Maine tournament, please let me know, because I'd love to play in a tournament rather than run one in New England. And so that sort of just resonated my people-pleasing service side of
Right.
my personality. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then at the same time, I started trying to form the main SBG Defenders of the North, which is the main club for SBG. And I wanted to like grow that. And I was like, well, if we got a main tournament going, and we had, about 5 players in Maine who were relatively consistent. I was like, well, we could get other people from New England involved, and I was trying to figure out how to do that. And he said, find a convention in Maine and try to host it there. So that began my search. So that's sort of the why I wanted to get into running a tournament, was to, one, relieve the pressure from the folks who were always running them in New England, and two, to try and grow the very small Maine community into something larger. And I think both of those ended up panning out, but we'll talk more about that later.
That's great to hear. Like, I mean, I doubt I'll ever go through the process of gathering a bunch of people up to host an event, but like having people such as yourself who are people pleasers, you wanting to gather people together to play, or as Vroke said, he's already in a community of a bunch of people who play. Being able to get another event in, another day where a bunch of us players can come together and just bash out 3, 4, 5, 6 games over a day or over a weekend. It is good fun. When you're going to set up an event, like, do you think about what would be unique, or you thinking, because it's your first one, you just want to do a standard 700, a standard 800, or like, were there any ideas that you had and then like pulled back on, or was it just like, I just want it to be a nice, easy event, just so we can have a nice sequence of games? Like, what when you went into making an event, what was behind it? Was it just want some easy games, or do you want to do something unique, something a bit fun for players?
Yeah, so when the process of trying to design what the tournament would be came about, I didn't know pretty much anything about running a live tournament. I've ran a couple on Tabletop Simulator, but those are just, easy to just throw together, people schedule. It's not a venue and everything else system, a schedule and all that stuff. And so when I was trying to figure out like how to run a tournament and what to do for a tournament, I actually turned to 2 of the folks that run local tournaments. I turned to Matt Iverson and I turned to Alex Dubois, and I asked them some questions. How do you approach the conventions to ask about running a tournament? And I was asking a lot of really preliminary stuff, like, and I also to design like what the tournament was going to be about, like if it's going to be casual, one few days with some random rules thrown in, or traditional, or what have you. I spoke a little bit to a couple of the folks in Maine. I was like, hey, what are you kind of interested in of doing? They're like, yeah, I want to do a tournament, which was a very simple answer, which left me with kind of more questions than answers. Yeah. And so I kind of just figured, okay, I guess I will try and adopt the model of the tournaments that I've seen happen already. And so I did a little bit of monkey see, monkey do. I posted on the Facebook group asking what people would be interested in. Would they be interested in a 2-day tournament or a 1-day tournament? And that's kind of where I started. I just wanted to know, do people want to have 2 days so that people can travel and then stay at a place nearby and then play a second day? Or would folks want to do 1 day? And it was a resounding 2-day response. Folks wanted to go, stay the night, socialize in that night in the middle, play the second day and leave, so that we could fit more games in. So that we wouldn't be restricted to lower points, and go from there. So I just kind of looked at the 2 tournament packets of the 2 most recent tournaments, Return to the Past of the Dead and Shadows in the East, and I just started copy and pasting stuff over into a Google document to make my tournament packet, and then rewording some stuff and to make it look like I didn't copy their homework, and decide on a point total, which was kind of some humming and hawing. I was like, 600 points. If Nova's 650, and I was like, let's pick a number that's not that. Let's pick a different number. So I chose 600 points, which is a number that is both different from the others, and also I wanted to lean a bit lower so that new players didn't feel a financial pressure to have to own as many models to play, which I think was huge because we had some folks who were just starting armies and were able to put together 600 points pretty easily because of that. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I just, to come up with what the tournament would be, I just copy and pasted a little bit from the experienced folks, and then kind of learned from that itself for how to design what the tournament is as a foundation. But yeah,
I think that copying and pasting their homework, for lack of a better term, is actually a really great place to start. Like, it sounds kind of like cheaty, but I mean, really, that's what we're all doing. Taking a look at what other event packets say, like, okay, what is the points total that I have to make? Where is it going to be held at? Are there going to be any banned models or banned armies? Are there any special rules as part of this event? Sort of taking what people have already done and then putting in your own answers to each of those categories is actually a really, really good place to start. That's what I did when I started hosting that doubles tournament, which was my first tournament. I kind of looked at what had been done at that doubles tournament the year prior, and then I kind of thought, okay, what are the things that I want to avoid? So for example, I didn't want people to be running Tom Bombadil and Goldberry because I felt like that would have created a negative play experience for some of the people there. So as I was going through and creating my, I think calling it a packet is a bit generous to what I wrote out. But when I was creating my event description and everything, I was sure to include Tom Bombadil and Goldberry as models that were banned as part of the tournament. I said, okay, each of the halves of the armies are going to be 500 points. So taking what has already been created and then figuring, okay, what do I want for my own event, is not only a good place to start, but is also what I imagine that people that have done it, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 times, that's what they're doing too. So don't feel bad if you're out there and you're someone that's planning your first event. Don't feel bad taking a tournament packet from one of those big tournaments and saying, okay, let me take everything that's specific to their tournament out and I can put in all of my answers here. Don't feel bad about that at all, because that'll give you a really, really good structure, and will help you make sure to not miss anything that's super important.
Yeah, the copy and pasting and learning about what I'm copy and pasting, that's a good point that you highlighted, because like I didn't know how to schedule the rounds. I was like, I mean, I guess I'm gonna try to figure out how long people need to play and all that stuff. And since I could just look at what a prior schedule had, I was able to take it, look at the timing, figure out what was needed, and then just slot it in. And it was also a little bit tricky with figuring out the timing for the actual convention, how much time I was allotted for each day. And so being able to have a structured example from a prior tournament and then be able to fit that into my time scheme I was trying to work in, it was super helpful to copy and paste. And also I didn't even think about like banned models and things like that until I was reading through the Nova packet and the Shadows of the East packet, and I was looking at all this information and I was like, okay, I want to touch on this topic. So I need to decide, do I want to do a straight up match play guide experience? Do I want to do veto system? I ended up doing veto system since folks were very interested in it. And since Nova was going to be doing it at this tournament was an excuse for folks who were going to go to Nova to try out the veto system and see how it works, which was like a bit of a curveball into my tournament design, was then learning how to set up a veto system for a tournament. which is actually a lot simpler than I made it out to be when I first was trying to do it. It was literally just pick some scenarios that I think go well together, and then that's the pool, and then just keep going until you have all 5 rounds figured out. But things like modeling standards and painting standards and some of the language you want to use in that, like for us here in New England, for now 2 of our tournaments, mine and one of the others, painting requirement wasn't a thing. It was strongly recommended to show off the hobby to folks who would walk by at the convention. But in order to help grow the community, we didn't require painting, which is maybe perhaps a bit of a heresy in the tournament scene, to not have a 3 paint minimum and basing and all that. But I thought it was really important that new players who who are very new to painting or whatever could still participate in their local community at the first main event. Because this was the first event in Maine history, so I wanted to really be able to be accessible to that sort of thing. Same thing with modeling standards, so third-party miniatures and 3D prints and stuff were allowed, so that if folks couldn't find Iron Hills dwarves or what have you, they could then source, historical miniatures, or they could source various 3D printing designer dwarf, and so being able to go over that sort of information was good.
I mean, as you've both been saying, mainly Commi, where you wanted to be able to host an event that new players could come to. It's mad because, in the UK, obviously home of Games Workshop, Middle Earth Strategy Battle games a lot more available to us, and we just have a lot more of it. I went to Scouring this year. I also went to Scouring of Cheshire last year. It's a big tournament, 800 points. We actually have quite a lot of new players go to those, and they still have their painted armies, third party or not. People just be yeah, this is just like one dude there was just yeah, this is my second game ever. I just signed up to the tournament. I painted my army for the tournament to learn the game through the tournament. Brilliant, lovely. That's what I love to hear. So it's good that you've approached it in a way that suits your environment, where Middle Earth isn't as readily available, or it costs quite a bit more than it does over here. I just think that just helps build the community anyway. It's just being inclusive and let people bring what they need to bring to play, and at least it's represented well. It's not like someone's coming with bottle caps or whatever. But
right,
yeah, man, I can fully get behind that idea of just creating events that's not for tryhards only. It's good. There are tournaments for that. You get your GTs, people who are there to win, but you can have a tournament so big that it has the people who want to win at the top tables, and then the people who are just there for the games. They're just there to play and have a good time. It's that's why I think the term event usually fits it more than tournaments, because it's just a group of games. It's not everybody's trying to claim the top spot, get the prize and such. Speaking of prizes, when you were coming up with the tournaments and that, was that, well, not tournaments, the events, was that ever in your mind, I want to give a prize to somebody, or thinking about getting an actual wooden spoon for the wooden spoon player, the wooden spoon contender, just those sort of fun things? Did that ever come across in the making of an event process, or were you just mainly focused on getting the schedule down and getting it to work?
Yeah, so I felt like a social or community obligation to provide some sort of prize support. And so I guess it was out of tradition that I did it, and I also wanted folks to have something cool to look forward to. And the 2 other terms I had attended in the New England area prior, both of the formats had an everybody gets a prize format. So the prize table, the first player picks first, and they get to take from the table, and then best painted gets to pick second, third, and all the way down to the wooden spoon. They get to pick a prize from the table, and then the wooden spoon. So perhaps if anyone's new to the hobby, wooden spoon is the person in last place. Traditionally, I think that's an English tradition, but it's been adopted into the New English tradition recently. So the process of coming up with prizes was a bit difficult, because the other two tournaments was stuff from their collection, right? Like whether it was
Yeah.
models, things that they never used anymore, unopened boxes, things donated to them by local stores or perhaps vendors at the convention. There was some sort of production value and financial power behind their prize tables that I didn't have access to. And so, to you new players out there or new tournament runners, I'm going to provide an example of a financially less powerful prize table. So I still want there to be a prize. I want there to be prizes for the top 3. I want there to be a prize for best painted that was special. And then I want to have something that everyone could take and go home with. I was in a fortuitous position that one of my family members, a bit farther up north the state, was in possession of a filament printer. So that sort of started to get the gears turning of what I could do for prizes. And I found some free STLs. Actually, I stumbled across a TikTok on YouTube, but I'll just say I found it on TikTok. So I found a TikTok of someone who had a Andurill's like hilt and like a short stubby blade that could hold role-playing game dice in it. And it had like a sheath, and you could cap it over. And they also shared that they had made a Narsil's tip for it. That you could put it on and it had an extended sheath. You could put it, you could hold all your role-playing game dice in it. I was like, that's sick. But instead of just copying that and using that, I want to modify it. So that same family member is starting to learn Blender, and I had them. I sent them some ideas for what I wanted to how I wanted to modify it, and basically I instructed him: can you turn the role-playing game dice slots into just 8 D6 slots that can fit the Games Workshop dice, like the bigger, like the Monopoly size dice, 16 millimeter, which was easy for him. He's like, yeah, of course, boom, done. We printed onto the sheath the year, so 23, and then the name of the tournament, Defense of the North, for the top 4 spots. And then for the other players, for everybody, I provided 2 sorts of prizes that from each sort, everyone got one. One of them was that same family member. We worked together to design a measuring widget that could do 6 inches, 3 inches, etc., and had the name of the tournament on it. And so, boom, that was on the table. Printed that off easy. The last one was that yet another family member I leaned into. There's a theme here. Was really into painting rocks. She had done, just for fun, a variety of rocks for various franchises and licenses, just like, for fun, right? So like a Studio Ghibli, like Totoro rock, and a Star Wars rock, and things like that, And then she made a couple for that were Lord of the Rings, and I was there visiting. The idea for another prize then came out. It was, can you make 12, because there were 12 slots in the tournament, can you make 12 painted rocks that are all different, that all fit the Lord of the Rings theme? And she said, yes, as long as you buy me paint pens that I can use to paint rocks more. And I agreed. So between buying a ton of filament for the printing side of things and then buying paint pens for the rock painting side of things, we provided very personalized touch, non-model, non-Lord of the Rings memorabilia prizes that were tools that could be useful, a trophy that could be useful, dice, and then a personalized rock that could be a Hobbit hole or the Door of Moria or the Eye of Sauron or what have you. And that's what I ended up deciding to do for prizes, was a sort of rustic main / utility prize table.
Yeah, that's like pulling from every source you can just to, get like this cool prize pool, especially from your local community as well and family. Like, yeah, that's sick. I would, like, if I was to, I'd never think to like look to my family. I'd be constantly looking at like professionals or whatever. I'd never think, oh wait, yeah, let's just keep it to my resources I have handy to me. What about yourself, Vroke? Like, when you've hosted an event or co-hosted an event, what's went into the prize pool for yourself?
Yeah, it is really interesting hearing everything that Commi was saying there, because the tournaments that I've TO'd, and then there's one coming up in a couple months that I'm also going to TO. It's like almost completely different prize pools for lack of a better term there. So the tournaments that I tend to host, and honestly even tend to go to here in this part of the country, tend to be based out of game stores.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening there at most events that I go to, and then the ones that I've TO'd, is that when people register for that tournament, they will not pay me or any other person that's TOing. They will pay the game store. And then what ends up happening as part of people placing first, second, third, anything there, is that they will get they will end up getting store credit. And so for the event that I did back in February, when we had a doubles tournament of 20 different doubles teams, what ended up happening is that people registered on Best Coast pairings. That is where the store set up the event. They would pay their $15 registration fee.
Yeah.
And then the teams that ended up getting first, second, and third got store credit for their placement. I also like to give a couple of other prizes and awards too, or let me phrase that differently.
Yeah.
I also like to recognize either players or teams that don't finish first, second, and third. I think when you're hosting events regularly in the same local area, you can tend to see the same people possibly finish first, second, third. Maybe it's the same group of people placing 5th to 10th at larger events. And so something that I've seen done that I liked so much that I've then carried on to all of the tournaments that I've TO'd is I'd like to give a prize to the person or team that places last. There are some different ways of doing that. I've seen people do it where the person that places last, the cost of registering for the next tournament is free.
Oh,
so that it kind of gives them an incentive of, hey, you might have come last, but if you come out again, this is going to be at no cost to you.
Yeah.
Tournaments that I've TO'd, I also tend to give them a bit of store credit there too. And then what we have in the local area, we tend to also call the Bridesmaid Award. If I'm honest, I don't really love the name, and if I could think of a different name, I would probably call it something else. But basically, it's an award for the person or team that places either 4th through second to last that hasn't ever placed in any other tournament. So maybe you're a person that comes out and you play a lot of, let's say, 10 person tournaments, and you finish a lot of like 6th, 7th, 8th. You aren't ever going to place in the top 3 to get maybe one of the prizes that's part of this tournament. But when this tournament has a bridesmaid award, whoever is the highest person that hasn't ever placed, they will also get some kind of trophy, award, anything there. Again, just to incentivize and positively reward people for coming out to tournaments, and even if you don't place in the top 3, showing
consistent. They're showing interest. Yeah, they're still coming out. Yeah. I was just thinking that like bridesmaid. Oh, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Yeah.
Right.
I reckon that's really cool. I'd like, if I was to go to frequent events such as yourself, I'd love there to be something like that in place, just to reward people who still show up, even just for the laugh, just for the banter, just for the games. Yeah, they might not be placing well, but hey, you've been to like your 5th, 6th one in a row. Here's a little thank you or something. You keep the community going, you're keeping the games going. That's sick. That.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. The
Commi just noting it down.
Yeah, I know. Like logging it away, because we did a wooden spoon, as I had hinted towards earlier, and it wasn't a literal wooden spoon. It was actually a plastic spear. But that's super cool. The Bridesmaid Award, which I'm not sure what. Maybe call it the Fellowship Award. I don't know.
Yeah, I like try to come up with like a theme name for it each time. But I can't think of anything else for like the overall award type. We also in the Richmond community, which we call ourselves MERV for Middle Earth, Richmond, Virginia. We also tend to give trophies and plaques to people that end up getting prizes. We actually have a member of our community who is always happy to make trophies and plaques for us. he does it at no cost to us. So again, kind of similar to what Commi was saying, in that find these people that are part of your life, whether they're people that are part of your family or they're people that are just part of the community. Because this member will make trophies and plaques for us to use for all of our tournaments, so that when I hand out, the first place doubles trophy back in February, I was able to give each of the first place players one actual trophy. So yeah, we tend to go trophies and plaques with store credit as prizes, but that's just a function of us typically doing events at local stores where we have really, really good relationships with the staff there and the owners there, and they're always happy to offer us space. So that's our way of giving back to that store, is saying, okay, all of your fees go to the store, and then if you end up getting some kind of store credit as part of placement, go up to the front desk afterwards with me, and I will help set up your account with X amount of dollars in store credit.
Yeah, the in New England, where game stores are a little bit more further and far between, specifically game stores with floor space, because that's like a huge like I guess now we're now transitioning to like a venue sort of thing. You've talked a lot about running at game stores that have, I'm assuming because they host tournaments, they have floor space and table space and things like that. Here in New England, there's not a lot of stores that have a lot of floor space, and so we've had to sort of get a little crafty with where we end up hosting tournaments. There is one game store that just recently opened in Scarborough, Maine, so right there next to Portland and Boston. There's a tournament that has 3 gaming tables and a ton of tables for Magic, but they have like a good amount of floor space, and they're willing to host tournaments there. And he didn't even mention that there needs to be or support for the store. He just wants people to be walking the doors, because they're like, it's a 9-month-old store, so he just wants the foot traffic. Before that store sort of ended up on our map, game stores in general weren't a feasible option in New England. So when I was talking with Iverson about where to host a tournament, he suggested that like between either a venue at a convention or an alternative venue, so like a game store or what have you. He said that he and the folks in New England generally host at conventions, whether that's ArmorCon or Captain Con, or that they generally host at conventions because since we're a smaller community, we can find a space that has board. So since people have to travel upwards of 3 to 4 hours to get to the tournament, since we're all a bit scattered, having a place where people can stay. So a convention provides that. A room and tables, a convention provides that. And things like there are people walking by that might get interested and then thereby grow the hobby for New England. Because people might stop by and say, whoa, that's an awesome table. Gates of Erebor. What is this? And we can give them the sales pitch. Basically, every Middle-earth player has sort of a sales pitch for the game in their pocket that they have to pull out so that they can hope to get more players involved. So conventions end up being like sort of the go-to. So I ended up running it at a convention. The process of me finding a place to run this tournament was actually very hard, because main conventions don't really cater to wargaming. And the ones that do are very niche focused. So there is PortCon and SnowCon, and then there's HuzzahCon. PortCon is like an anime pop culture convention, comics and whatever. They don't really have a wargaming scene. They're trying to grow one, but their venue, they believe, it won't fit. SnowCon is a board gaming convention that's like up up in the sticks of Bangor, Maine, and struggles with whether or not they have a large venue space, and that kind of determines what people can do there. And when I was trying to set up the tournament, their convention, which takes place in January, they're going to be at a lodge. So they were only going to have space for like role-playing games and board games. They weren't going to have space for a tournament. So they kindly said, no, thank you. And then PortCon said, sure, we don't have the space for it, but we'd love to have a demo day. So that's obviously not what I was looking for. I'm actually going to be demoing there anyways, to try and grow the community. But then HuzzahCon is for a historical wargaming association in Maine, but it's for historical wargaming. And so I still reached out to the association. I said, hey, we want to run a tournament. Can we make this happen? And I heard nothing for months. And I guess there was some administration problems that were happening with technology or whatever, that they didn't even post that they were going to have a convention this year until like 5 months before, which ended up causing some trouble for them. But when I was able to get in contact with someone, they said, sure. Like, they were a little hesitant, but they were like, sure, we can make this happen. They ended up being welcoming. They ended up being very hospitable to like our needs. We were able to get, a quiet room that was shared with some other folks doing another tournament stuff, but they were a smaller group, and we were a group of 8 people. 8 out of 12 tickets were sold. Go me, passing grade. And we were able to get a little space and run a tournament there. Because it was at a convention, the entry fee sort of element kind of came in. So, which generally entry fees help pay for the prize support and the effort, of maintaining the terrain for all these events. Because obviously terrain will get destroyed through constant handling. But because the New England area runs out of conventions, a convention cost was a factor. And badges are, the cheapest badges in the state of Maine or in the New England area are $35 for the 2 days. That was kind of a steep cost. Then ask people to then pay a ticket fee afterwards. And because we're a small community, we don't have the same kind of draw that maybe Nova can, where they can have people a total of $150 for, 3 events and walking through the door. We haven't had entry fees. We just had people pay to go to the convention, and it's through the financial or creative, asset gathering of the TOs to be able to create their own prize tables. So something that I think I might try in the future to explore the process of building a prize table on the cheap is to maybe rethink how the state of Maine, or at least how I, approach the idea of entry fees. Either A, do it at a venue where charging entry fee is feasible, where there's not an added convention cost that I have to worry about, so at that local store, or an American Legion Hall, because Grange Halls seem to be very useful, and I've noticed that a couple UK events go out of a Grange Hall. Grange Hall being, and I actually could just be using the term wrong, it's just a large-ish building that has sort of a proscenium stage that folks might have a Boy Scout ceremony at or something. Just a general use community where people might do a hoedown or whatever, and they're all over the place in the East Coast, being a very old part of America. I guess it's like very traditional to have line dances and stuff, and so therefore there's a lot of hall space, and that could be an option. But regardless, I've had this idea of what if, because the 2 more financially powerful tournaments have stuff from their own collection that they bring forth, what if the entry fee was that everyone submits and then brings something from their collection that they're just not going to use, they don't want, whatever, that they could quote unquote liquidate as an entry fee and put it on the prize table. Everyone brings one, the TO included, so that way there's a guarantee that everyone will always not be stuck with something that they brought, because the TO brings that extra 1 entry. So somehow if Vroke came to this tournament, Vroke brought Radagast on Sleigh, and then everyone chose everything but Radagast at Sleigh, at least at my tournament, my item would be available for Vroke to choose. Because that could be interesting. Because I know I have a couple sprues of goblins here and there that I don't ever plan on using, and I can't really sell. that I could then bring, like, oh, okay, there's a tournament. People are going to bring stuff from their collection to throw on the table, and then we can do it's like a grab bag flea market, from order of top to bottom, pick something from the pile, which could be fun. But yeah, just some ideas I was thinking of for prize support and how to make it financially accessible that might not have the ability to charge fees, or who knows what the situation is.
Yeah.
I just want to say something quickly about things that are not not store credit at stores. If you're going to host an event at a game store or a hobby store or anywhere there, when you have a conversation with that store owner or manager and you talk about, hey, I want to have this type of event, this is what I'm thinking for prizes, talk with that owner or manager about what prizes that they are going to allow there, because I do know that some stores will restrict prizes to only being the store credit piece.
Yeah.
They might say, okay, store credit and trophies, but we don't want you giving out models or other things there, because that might hurt their bottom line or anything there. So if you're going to host an event at any type of store, just talk with that store management and find out if there are any guidelines or rules that they're going to want you to follow there, because after all, we are going to use their space. We're probably going to use their store's name and address and all of our promotion, and so just doing that bit to stay on the store's good side is just a good tip for any of you that are going to look to host your first event.
Yeah, definitely important. Yeah, talk to your store. I agree 100%, because then you're directly helping your local friendly game store. If you're at a convention space, the rules are a bit more freeform and light, so it just then becomes a matter of what's feasible for you or your group. Definitely agree. Yeah, support your local Hobbit community. Support your Hobbit hobbyists.
Always, yeah. Commi, you brought up a word that I really want to emphasize, that people don't forget this part of hosting a tournament, because I didn't think about it until it got closer, and then thankfully it had already been handled. But if you're hosting an event, figure out where and what terrain you are going to use for those tables.
Oh,
so
yes.
So
Yeah.
so if you are hosting, like for me as an example, hosting an event on August 12th for 20 people, so it's going to be 10 tables. Figure out what terrain you're going to use, because you're going to have to figure out how to get those pieces of terrain to that store, to the convention center, whatever. And most of us don't happen to own like 10 tables of terrain. So start to ask around, talk to your friends, talk to people that are local, talk to those people that are coming. Figure out that piece, because that can be one of the big stumbling blocks, I feel, of, okay, I'm going to have this event. Let's say that I'm going to have it of 40 people. It's going to be this huge thing. And, I've got 40 people registered for it. But that also means I have to find 20 tables worth of terrain out there. So even if it's easy to get the physical space and it's easy to get attendance numbers, don't let terrain fall off of your plate, because that's a huge piece. And again, I didn't think about it for the event that I had back in February, but thankfully it had already been handled. So when I thought about it, like 2 weeks out, the people doing it were like, it's okay. We have a bunch of tables coming in, so that's all fine. But yeah, don't forget about terrain.
Yeah. And to emphasize the accessibility, the process that I had to go through getting terrain set up, and I only had to set up a total of at most 6 tables. So not a huge ask, except for when you consider that we're a niche, small, spread out community. And I had no terrain to speak of myself. I had to follow those steps that you described. I reached out and I found my local friendly game store who does do some events there for bolt action or what have you. And so they have some modicum of terrain, and I wanted to make sure I had some Lord of the Rings terrain set pieces. But fortunately, because they were trying to be accommodating to the Middle Earth Club, and they have access to GBO store credit, like where they get to just get freebies from GW because they're a store and they want to host events. The GW rep was like, "Oh, you have this unused GW bucks that you could use for the Middle Earth group." And they ordered some Middle Earth terrain. So using the GW buck store, I had agreed to build and paint it with the caveat that I can then just borrow it for events. And they were like, "Yeah, that makes sense. You can definitely do that." And so I put together one of those Fortress of Dol Guldur sets that come with 6 ruins, and Rohan House and Rohan Palisade set. I put all that together, painted it. I never want to build Dol Guldur terrain ever again in my life. But I was able to get some donation stuff. I reached out online. I put a call to arms. Because we have a tournament, please, if you can bring terrain, send me an email of what you got so I can plan for it. And we had folks who usually run tournaments had asked, "How many boards do you need?" And I was able to really draw from the community, get some boards together. I only had to provide 2 boards worth of terrain. The rest of the boards were covered by everybody else, and that was great. It was so helpful to be able to rely on the community to make an event happen with beautiful boards, and it ended up just being pretty awesome. And if you're looking for cheap terrain, I mean, this isn't a terrain tutorial discussion, but if you're looking for cheap terrain and you're scrapping and you're looking for that extra table or even a couple more tables, find your local, like cheap thrift store, pet store, anywhere that might have aquarium terrain, because aquarium rocks are fantastic. Find if your tournament is around the holiday season and it's November or September when they start rolling out all of the winter holiday stuff. Those pine trees with the snow frosting on it,
yeah,
they're great. You grab a can of black spray paint, you grab a can of olive or green spray paint, prime them black, spray them green. Boom. You no longer have to worry about building a winter board. You've got a ton of pine trees, and just, glue them to some XPS foam hills or feed them into some felt that you could then glue sand on, whatever, to define wooden terrain. It's an insane amount of trees you can get with $20 at your local Walmart or department store or whatever. It's great.
I've always had this thing over here when people are looking for cheap and easy terrain. It's actually aquarium stuff. Like a lot of aquarium decorations, like bushes or like a fence or a little stone wall. You buy enough of that stuff, you could make a thematic medieval fancy-ish looking board out of it. Like, yeah, maybe not get a castle that's the size of a fish, but get like the walls, the fences, the plants, or fake plants that they have. What you need to do is get rid of the clear base that's supposed to go under the stones of the aquarium or whatever. Spray over it, work it into the board itself. I feel like that's also another really handy way to get terrain on a budget. Like if you don't have access to it from friends, or you don't have it yourself or such like that, maybe pet store. Look at aquarium stuff, because I found a lot of it is within scale of Middle Earth stuff. I don't know how many people sleep on that.
Yeah, and also another free terrain piece of advice: if you live near the woods, there's this thing called moss and lichen, an old man's beard, all that kind of fungus. It keeps. It keeps.
Oh, right, okay, then I wouldn't have expected that. Yeah, and go outside. And
touch grass.
Touch some grass.
It's you dry that, like, the lichen out, or you dry the moss out or whatever, right? And then you glue it to a rock or whatever, or you ball up the lichen into bushes, or you glue it to a piece of cardboard. Who cares? Paint it over. If you're looking for terrain on the cheap, touch some grass, get some gravel,
get some vitamin D from going outside.
I remember when I was, a wee little lad, and I would be playing with my Warhammer miniatures, and I'd be like, "Oh man, I want to build a cool little battle arena inside the house, and I just need some cool stuff, Mom. Can we get some cool train train modeling trees, which those are also good for terrain. Can we get some train modeling trees or whatever? And my mom said, there's the woods. That's that the terrain has been pre-built for you by nature. and so then I ended up playing a game of strategy battle game on a bunch of like igneous rock and grass and dirt and stuff. It was sick. Like we just set out like a 4x4 area. We played in the grass. And there was like goblins climbing on rocks and like a snail walked through our fight. It was great.
How's that for a middle of event? Hey, guys, we're going to meet up in the middle of the woods. I've marked out the 4x4 areas with like little flags. They're your tables.
Just lay on your belly like you're a kid.
Everyone gets a dice tray. Here you go. We'll all play outside. I mean, just pray it doesn't rain. But yeah.
Yeah, basically. Wait for a dry spell.
Aye, get a nice dry, good day where it's dry, not too cold, not too hot. Bunch of dudes outside playing in the grass, playing in the woods, playing in the bark. Maybe get a barbecue going. That sounds sick, man. I'd actually go something like that. So I was like, yeah.
Speaking of barbecue, I've actually wanted to, because Maine's it's the vacation land. It's very lakes and cabins, everything. I've actually wanted to have folks as entry fee pitching in to get a cabin on the lake.
Yeah.
And play some games at the cabin.
That'd be sick.
Then go kayaking and canoeing and stuff, and like have a barbecue and like have a fantastic vacation. You're playing some Lord of the Rings games during it to make it a Lord of the Rings event, but then also everyone can just enjoy like the summer.
keep talking. I'm booking my next flight.
Yeah.
I'm on my way.
Something that we did at Shadows in the East, Matt Iverson runs that tournament. The night in between the 2 days, we all went to the same restaurant. He's like, hey, do we all just want to go hang out and enjoy some food? Everyone went.
Yeah, no, that'd be, yeah. But like the 2-day event over here, we get the same, where you go the first day and then after everyone's played a night, it's usually like, the opponents you've really got on with or the friends that you've met up with there or whatever. It's just like, oh, where you go for food? Oh, yeah, you're right if I come with, that sort of thing.
If it's a one-day tournament at a game store, maybe it's a bit harder.
Yeah, I think like that's a thing across everywhere. I'm sure Vroke, you got the same. Like, have you got, like, when events are done and that, you've got a bunch of people grouping up, heading out for food in similar areas and such?
I actually can't say that that's something that I tend to do.
Oh, wow.
Because, well, I think, so Commi just brought up that if you're having it at a game store, it's a bit harder there. The events that I host and go to also tend to be 1-day events, more so than 2-day, and so it can be a bit harder there to say, okay, I am going to ask all of you to come out to the store for 6, 7, 8 hours, whatever, and then there's going to be an optional food thing. Also, those that I tend to go to and host are larger than the event that Commi hosted, and so when I've got 20, 25, or that 20 doubles teams, I've got 40 people there. Sort of even if I make that offer of, okay, we can organize a group outing for food, that just wasn't a level of responsibility that I wanted to take on. But if it were a event on the smaller scale and it was a 2-day event, so people were kind of already bought in to that, that I can totally see fitting in. It just hasn't really fit in, I think, with what I've wanted to do and with some of the outside parameters of where I've hosted events at.
Yeah, that's fair, man. That's fair. You just mold to what's already there. As you said, you're already established in your community. It's a gaming store and such. So yeah, it's not what you're going into. It's not what you're going into. That's fair, man.
Yeah. So Commi's brought up this point over and over and over again, and I think that it's really, really important about making events accessible.
100%.
And so if that is accessibility through cost, if it's accessibility through not having a 3-color requirement for painting, which I'm totally in Commi's camp of, not every event has to have a painting requirement there. If it's accessibility about proxies and third-party models, whatever, try to make your events accessible when possible. Think about that as one of the factors when you're thinking about your event, because I don't know that any of us, or really anybody in this country, in the United States, is really lucky enough to be part of a community where they can't think about that, since the game isn't the most popular miniatures game in the actual country. We should want to bring in people to tournaments and events. We should want people to come to their first event. We should be trying to lower all of those barriers. And so trying to think about that in all of the aspects. Again, Commi's brought it up in a bunch of different contexts, but I think it's really, really important that people think about that, because at least personally, as a TO, I would hate the feeling of someone seeing an ad or a post about an event that I was hosting and thinking, oh, I really want to go to that, but I can't because A, I can't afford it, B, I don't have the right models, like anything there, that would kind of make me rethink that event. And then counterpoint on that, if you are making an event more accessible, you increase the chances that someone there is going to be new or learning the game. Back at my very first tournament that I went to, my second game at that event was playing someone who was playing his second ever game of Middle-earth strategy battle game, and his first actual game was in round 1. So he was super new. And so then kind of thinking about, okay, what are the things that I need to support those players there? And I don't know if Commi has a different opinion here. I would kind of like to hear what he thinks about this. But I like to ask players to submit lists for approval ahead of time. Some tournaments and TOs will just ask you to turn in a list when you get there. Some will have it a lot more on the honor system. But I tend to be part of the camp that asks players to send it to me like maybe 1 week prior to the event, just so I can register it, make sure that everything in it is valid, follows any FAQs, anything there. Because when you have a player that's maybe new or less experienced, they might overlook an FAQ, for the old alliance charts, say, like, okay, well, now I have to have a hero of valor if I'm going to have a yellow or red alliance, and someone got FAQ'd into or out of that category. I don't know, anything there. So I tend to ask people to send me their lists prior to the event, but I don't know what Commi thinks about that.
Yeah, so I 100%, I had folks submit lists to me with the deadline of 7 days before. It was kind of a soft deadline. As long as they got it to be within like 5 days, it was fine, because I had one person submit 2 days late because they were traveling. But that was fine, because I had a heads up. And it was really important for me that folks had the opportunity to submit their lists for those reasons. I went through and even if some of them used Battlescribe or Lonely Night Builder, which one or both could end up being unreliable in some cases, even if they have some sort of calculator or a spreadsheet or whatever, I still deleted all the points totals from their list, took their list, and then I built it from their ingredient list. So I looked up the points. I looked at whatever FAQs. I rewrote their list in my own words, and so I could check it for errors.
And I think treating it like what you were saying of, this is not a hard deadline where if I don't have your list by 5 p.m. on the day that's posted, then you're not playing, whatever. It's okay, this is the date that I want you to turn in lists by, and if that date passes and I haven't heard anything from you, then I'm gonna blow up your email, blow up your social media, whatever, so that I can track down you, so that I can verify that list. Because I was in the same boat, Commi. When I did that doubles event, I mean, it was 20 doubles teams, so it was so many lists, and there were many rules that people just don't even think about, that I had to be like, oh, this is a yellow alliance, so you have to have heroes of valor, and they were like, oh my gosh, totally forgot all of that. I had some team that brought a whole bunch of siege weapons, and I had to be like, you have to have a hero of fortitude for each of those. So always having that lets you catch out those things. Not because I think that players are evil or trying to cheat anything, but just kind of providing that baseline, so that someone doesn't make an error when they're handwriting and they write an 8 rather than a 6 or anything. Just giving that bit of verification, I think is really helpful. It isn't necessary at all, but I think it'll be a good I think it's a good practice to get in the habit of, and possibly push your local scene into getting the habit of too.
Yeah, and there was another reason too that I think goes a little bit unnoticed with the early submission, is that it saves you time as a TO. So because I had lists submitted early, I could use time management to be able to check lists ahead of time, so I didn't have to worry about lists on the day of. I didn't have to look at lists. I didn't have to review lists. I didn't have to have discussions about lists at all on the day. It was just, here's everyone's list, hand it to them. Right. And then also, so that because I did it early on, a week ahead, I could review the list, respond on that Monday, and then I could then focus on other things leading up to the tournament, which was frantically painting the rest of the terrain, frantically, making sure I have, X, Y, and Z done in preparation for the tournament. Make sure my car is packed. Make sure I figured out how I'm going to feed myself in 2 days. The aspect that I almost forgot to do about being a TO was also figuring out what my needs were. Where I'm staying, what I'm eating, what am I going to do while these 16 hours of gameplay are running? How am I going to entertain myself?
Oh, on that Commi, I don't want that to go by without talking about that too, because that was something that I didn't even think about when I was doing my first tournament, and I'm just looking back at my old schedule now, and rounds were 2 hours and 15 minutes. I mean, it was a 1,000 point doubles tournament, so we'd have lots of time. But to that point about how am I going to occupy myself, I mean, I probably did 120 laps of the game store of just walking around all of those tables, because there was a large portion of time where I was bored out of my mind. You will send your players off. You'll tell them what table they're going to. They will go ahead and start playing, and then you're like, all right, now I don't have anything to do, till anyone turns in, their results for the end of their game. But that might not be for 2 hours.
Gotta have something to do. Yeah, and here's an idea. If you're running at a convention or at a game store, and your tournament's not taking up the full space of the game store, is to have a demo table. So the tournament could be going on, and then I have a table here with 2 set up, 200 point, 300 point, whatever, right? A pre-prescribed small game that if folks want to get involved, or they're curious, they want to try it. Since the tournament is, you sign up ahead of time, folks can't just drop in. And I think that might be a really good marketing strategy to sell the hobby to folks that are passing by. a bit more on your plate because you're now trying to explain a game to someone while you're managing a tournament. But if you've got those slow rounds where you go, all right, here's an introductory game. I might have to step away to manage a tournament, but I'm more than happy to walk you through the basic mechanics of how this game.
Yeah, for sure, man.
That's basically everything. I guess I have now a question that I will post to the group and maybe have an answer for myself. Is how do you end the tournament? The last round has finished. What does that look like?
For me, it tends to be fairly low key. I mean, I'm not a showman or a theater person at heart, so I don't have this natural instinct to make things maybe a greater show. I should tend to do kind of the opposite, because you want to be cognizant of your players' times, in my mind. And so if you've had people show up at 11 o'clock and now it's, let's say, 7 o'clock, you want to keep that in mind so that people can get their trophies, they can get their store credit, they can get their prizes, whatever it is, and then people can go home. So I after I gather everyone's scores and I've figured out who is winning what, I tend to just gather people over by me in the store or the room that it's held in. I tend to start with announcing the special awards first. So, like I brought up earlier, I tend to give the award for last place first. I tend to give the bridesmaid award, and then I'll just announce third, second, and then first. I tend to be just pretty cut and dry on it. There are times when I may spend a bit more time. As an example, one of our teams at the doubles tournament that I had back in February was two young boys. I mean, they were maybe 12 or 13. I mean, young. And I wanted to give them extra plaudits when I announced that they had the last place award, because I couldn't imagine going to a game store playing with, people in their 20s, 30s, and older when I was their age. So I spent a little bit of time talking there, but I tend to be pretty easy. Just here are the awards. Here are the people that won them. And then let me take you to the front of the store so I can do your store credit stuff. Since that's what I tend to do. And then, people pack up their armies. If they have brought terrain, they pack up tables. And then I just clean up everything. Oh, also, on your way out, thank whatever space that you're in. So if you're having it at your local game store, thank the store management, thank the store owner. If they're there, if you're having it at a convention, thank all those people that are there. But I don't tend to do anything kind of special. It's just here are the trophies and awards. These are the people that won them. Let's all go home and go to bed.
Yeah.
Tournaments that I've been to, very much you've finished up, you get your prize pool, that's all done. Players start leaving, and then there's always some folk who hang around who just want to talk to the TO, friends and all that, and help clean up essentially. Like, there's going to be, like, in the UK, lots of people have been drinking, there's been food, there's been lost and found items, and then all the tables have got to be put away, or at least, mostly, like, at least the terrain put away, just so overnight, there's nothing hanging around and stuff like that. I also just think, it's like final goodbyes and that, you just get people murmuring and stuff, talking in a little group, saying CEO or Mariah's here or whatever. I don't know. It just feels like, it's like a final goodbye at the end of a tournament. You've been with these same people for the day or whatever, and then you've done the event's finished with. It's just kind of like, right, okay, what do I go do now? I guess I say my goodbyes, and then I go home, I go to sleep, and I wake up even more tired tomorrow because I've not realized how much thinking I've been doing.
Yeah.
Something that I forgot to mention. That is also a great opportunity to share news and updates about other upcoming tournaments. And so often there's going to be someone that's playing in your tournament that is maybe TOing some other tournament in 1, 2, 3, 4 months. And so that's a great chance for them to do a plug for their event. If they know of other events coming up, do the plug for those events. Kind of, because that's one of 2 times that maybe everyone is gathered together, with the other time being when you announce game 1. And so kind of like final announcements, sharing news of the local community. That's a good time for all of that too.
Yeah. Mine was pretty simple as well. The award ceremony was like, semi-ceremonial, where it was a process of everyone picking their prize. So everyone gets to pick a prize. It might be a bit longer than those that might have like just a select number of prizes for certain spots. And so it was in order, or in whatever order, folks coming up, they're getting their handshake for the positions that they have, picking their prize, and then from the interest of growing the group and posting on social media, a picture of the player with their prize, beaming smile on their face, and then getting to the next person and going through until the end. And then before I did the prize ceremony, I had a special thanks moment where it was my first time running a tournament, so I was really thankful that people showed up. So I had a little thanks I did where I thanked the various people that brought terrain. I thanked the convention folks that made it possible, and then I thanked the people that are making the prizes and that sort of thing. And then I thanked the players for showing up. And I had a special thanks paper that said all of that I had on the prize table, so folks, when they were looking at the prizes before the tournament was done, they could see the paper that had a list of special thanks, and get that boost of serotonin if they were someone that I was personally thanking, which I thought was pretty important. And then it's just after everyone's got their prizes, it's say announcing we're trying to do a game day or a tournament or whatever the next tournament is, and saying you can go wherever you want, just don't be here, and start cleaning it up.
I am only laughing at that because although I'm not a theater person, I am a band person, and my college band director would always say that. He would tell us, I don't know where I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here, after we were back from some band competition. So
yeah, and then it's done, and then it lights out, and people are definitely, if you are attending a tournament and you're not the tournament organizer and you're attending, definitely offer a helping hand to clean up. It's helpful, unless you don't got the time, of course. I mean, not beholden to it, but think about offering a hand to carry stuff out to the car, because there's certainly probably a lot of boxes that the TO or anyone else who brought terrain has to cart back to their and that can be helpful. Just leave no trace if you were a Boy Scout. Just be helpful and get out of there. Leave.
Right. Yeah, because those store owners and store management, if you're playing there and it's late, they also might want to go home. So yeah,
clear out. The convention might be over before your actual tournament's over, so get out of there. But yeah, I think with that we've covered everything. Maybe there's something that we didn't, and I guess folks can comment and make fun of us in the comment section about what we forgot to talk about. But that's basically it. So yeah.
I think that overall, I just want to stress to people that it's a lot easier than it seems.
Yeah.
I think that when I went into hosting my first event, even though it was already created basically, and then I was just kind of taking over the running of the actual day, I thought, oh my gosh, there's 50 billion things, all this. And I mean, yes, there are a lot of factors for you to think about, but they're all things that you're going to think about naturally. Like you are going to think about, okay, what is the points level? Where am I going to have this event? But it is a lot more accessible to host a tournament than it might first come to mind as. Not every tournament has to be 30 or 40 players. If your local community is of the right size, or maybe there aren't enough people, you can totally have a tournament of 8, 10, 12 people. It's totally fine.
Yeah, that's what we were.
So I don't want people to be discouraged thinking that it's super hard, or oh, I don't have a community of 20, 30, 40, 80, 120 people that can be at a tournament. Like, no.
It'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to go with that as some final thoughts is, remember that a tournament can and often is just a structured social event where people can get together, play some games, meet some people, and have a good time. It doesn't have to be a stressful environment. You can, if you approach it with that mindset, it helps alleviate a lot of the stress, and helps also remind you that this is in fact a game that we play for fun, and not a job to put up a tournament, not a job to be a player. So laugh, learn lots, and be a better gamer for your community.
Yeah, there are things that you will do as part of running your first tournament that afterwards you'll be like, I don't quite know that was the best choice that I made here, or oh, I didn't think about X, Y, or Z. Those are the things to take into when you're hosting a tournament too.
Yeah, Lord knows I made some mistakes when I was running the tournament. It felt really rocky during, but once the games were back underway, it's like nothing happened.
Yeah.
So you'll make mistakes, and you making a mistake is a sign of positive things to come. I guess if we reference theater again, if you don't make a mistake in your dress rehearsal, then woe to your first open.
Yes.
But yeah, well, thank you, Vroke, for joining us for this little discussion about tournaments.
Of course.
And thank you, King, for once again joining this ad hoc wild caper of episode 2.
Oh yeah, man. I'm always down for a chin wag into wholesome questions, man.
Oh yeah. And thank you to everyone who tunes in to listen to this whenever this gets posted, and I managed to edit the audio and then wrestle with the video editing program. But we'll see you for the next one.
Yep. Take care, guys.
See ya.
Ciao.